Hello, everyone, and welcome to this pre-conference session of AAC in the Cloud. We're excited to have you here with us. Today, we have Stefanie and Naomi here to give us a presentation about visual impairments in AAC, case study, and discussion of tips and device adaptations. And we'll turn things over to them.
Hi, my name is Stefanie, and I am a speech language pathologist. I'm also a LAMP trainer for the Center for AAC and Autism, and I've worked as a special education teacher and also have an extensive background in assistive technology. I'm super happy to be here with Naomi today.
Hi, I'm Naomi, and I'm from Ontario, Canada, and I am a part-time AAC user, but I'm going to be using speech today because I kind of forgot to charge my other iPad. And I live with disabilities, multiple disabilities, mental health conditions. I've worked with children and adults who have various disabilities, including those who use a variety AAC in a variety of settings. I'm also a resource guider with Girl Guides of Canada, and I like to read and play games. And I am in my picture above, I am a white woman with grayish brown hair, wearing a pink striped shirt in a purple wheelchair with an iPad with a blue case.
I'm a white woman in a blue shirt with shoulder-length brown hair. You know, we didn't plan to do this, Naomi. Well, I'll do a disclosure. I am a paid trainer for the Center for AAC and Autism, which is affiliated with PRC Saltillo, makes the devices known as Accent, as well as other language systems that are available on the iPad. A professional disclosure, I'm a speech language pathologist. I have experience as a special ed teacher and assistive technology professional. I'm not an expert in visual impairments, and I don't hold any certifications in vision-related fields. My perspective on the information shared today comes from my experience as a speech pathologist, AT professional, and special education teacher. Naomi, we didn't really talk. Sorry.
I should probably disclose that I am not a specialist in visual impairment either. I live with visual impairment. I am legally blind. I have fairly good central vision, but no side vision, no peripheral vision, up, down, or sideways. And I have worked with various children with various disabilities, but not a lot with visual impairment, although I've had a lot of visually impaired friends. I also am a member of Girl Guides of Canada, and I don't know if I have to disclose that or not, so I may as well. Okay, bye.
Well, and this is fun for me to do this. Naomi and I have not met in person. We met in a Facebook group for AAC Facebook group, and we just began chatting over time, and I've learned a lot of things from Naomi, and she really is the expert in this presentation, as far as I can tell. Just a couple of things to touch on before we start with the case studies and ideas for you to consider. This presentation is based on the premise that individuals who are not speaking at whatever stage of life they're in have a need to have access to a robust language system. When it comes to individuals who are also visually impaired, there is a greater, not a greater need, but there's a greater complexity. There's a wonderful article that was published by, you can see the reference on the slide, that was published in 2021, focusing on children with cortical visual impairments and complex communication needs, and just kind of assessing the situation between service providers and best practice and evidence and what's happening in the field with individuals who are looking to acquire access to robust language systems. And there's just some barriers that seem to be a little more prevalent when we look at this population. Number one, there's a great deal of knowledge deficit, both at the pre-service and in-service level. Our experts in the field of vision impairments who are practicing. We just have a fewer number of those professionals compared to others who are working in the field, like special education teachers and speech pathologists and occupational therapists, etc. So there's a knowledge deficit in the field in general, because there's lots of people working with kids who we don't know what we're doing. This particular population has some complexities, and they're an extremely heterogeneous group of AAC users, meaning there's such a wide variety of visual impairment potentials, as well as complex body potentials and ability potentials. So trying to work from a feature match model just becomes challenging, and that what we are designing and agreeing is best practice is literally happening right now. We are literally in the field, in the arena of ongoing research, determining what's best practice. So there's a lot of room for growth in this area. Naomi and I are going to share ideas of how to tweak and modify different AAC systems and different features that you might consider playing with, whichever AAC system you're using. And Naomi will speak about this some more. And feel free to chime in. But we've talked about this. Like, in some cases, for some individuals, having fewer buttons or hiding buttons temporarily, or using things like guided access so that you can kind of lock down the system, they make sense for certain users. And we have to keep in mind this idea of what does it mean to be least restrictive when it comes to AAC, and what might feel comfortable to the provider, the service provider, or the parent, because there's a perception that we need to make things simpler and more controlled. We just have to always be asking ourselves, what is the therapeutic reason for doing what we're doing? Is there a therapeutic reason to hide all but 2 words on a device? Is there a therapeutic reason to use guided access for that one person that you're working with? And always kind of keeping that running in the background so that you don't have a situation where you're automatically making things super simple and kind of locked down, and you end up with a really restrictive AAC system. I know I've heard this with any kind of complex body, but if you've met one person with a vision impairment, you've literally only met one person with a visual impairment, and the possibilities of what's happening in an individual body just varies greatly. The other premise that...
Can I say one thing?
Oh, I'm sorry.
The other thing you have to keep in mind is once you put something on guided access, you're limiting all the other access tools on the iPad. So you're limiting assistive touch, you're limiting using the magnifier, you're limiting a whole bunch of things that a visually impaired person could use. So keep that in mind, because you want your student or your user to be able to access as much as possible. iPads are a wonderful tool, and so are dedicated devices, but once we lock them into guided access, we have to be careful not to limit what access methods the user can use.
Right, exactly. And I'm of the mindset that if you do something like that, if you feel like you need to use guided access because for whatever legitimate therapeutic reason, then you're always testing. Can I turn it off? Can I make it less restrictive? And the idea that comes to mind is I like to garden, and if you put a plant in a really small pot, it will only grow so big. And think about an AAC system as a pot with dirt in it, and you're planting an individual in that environment. And is there room to grow? Is there room for that individual to meet their full growth potential in that little pot you're putting them in? And they might need a bigger pot. The other premise that Naomi and I have talked about and kind of see as really important to acknowledge is that we need to remind ourselves there are no prerequisites to qualify for a robust AAC language system. I hope Naomi will speak some more about her own challenges with her visual system. And you know, if we try to make predictions about what someone is capable of doing, 99% of the time, I think we underestimate that. So the two things that really we're looking for is the person alive? And is there at least one reliable body movement to facilitate an access method? And I just find when we're working with people with visual impairments, we want the visual system so badly to be the primary sensory processing system, because that's the primary processing system we estimate for most humans. Most humans acquire knowledge about their experience in life and the world around them through their visual system. So when we're working with someone who has visual impairments, I think we sometimes forget that we can use assistive technology and we can make modifications to facilitate access and development and acquiring skills, and we're not waiting for vision to get better. There is so much to cover with regards to vision impairments, and this class is not really designed, this little session is not designed to teach you about different types of vision impairments. My practice as a speech language pathologist is when I begin working with someone and they come to me with a diagnosis of a particular vision impairment, then I try to understand what it's like to be in that person's body. And if I can begin to understand what it's like to be in that person's body and perceive the world through the kind of vision that they have access to, then that helps me understand what it might be like for them to access a communication device. If you're not familiar with different visual systems, I'll take a moment and just show you this resource page. We've put together a Google document that you will have access to. If you're watching this video, you can pause it, and there's a QR code on the screen that you can scan that will take you to the Google Drive document. If you need to type it into a web browser, I'll read it out loud to you. It's https:// and it's tiny URL. So tinyurl.com// V as in Victor, I, the word and, so AND, and then AAC as in cat. And I'll just exit out of my presentation for a moment and show you a couple of things that will help you with that last suggestion. Under the resources section, there are a couple of links to vision simulators, one for common eye problems and then one for CVI, cortical visual impairment. There's also a cortical vision impairment screener and a ton of other information about some of the things that we'll be talking about today. I encourage you to go and that will help you. So now I'm going to stop talking and I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and Naomi's going to get my screen stopped, and Naomi is going to share her screen and begin to show some of the changes that she's made to her devices. And Naomi, you're muted if you're talking. Naomi, are you able to share your
Yeah,
screen?
can you see my screen? No, not yet.
No, not yet.
Can you see my screen now?
Yeah.
Oh, good.
And I'm going to mute myself.
Okay, good idea. So this is part 2 of case study on visual impairments and device tips and whatever. Sorry, it's a long title. Adaptations for visually impaired people. Now, I am visually impaired, and I'm going to show you some of the adaptations I have made for my system and talk about a couple others that I have learned about. Wait a minute. How do I do this? Oh, well, I'll just do it this way. So a smaller grid should be a last resort, I think, personally, because a smaller grid size will make communication more difficult. It will make more hits to get to a button. Motor planning is really important for any AAC user, but especially for someone who is visually impaired. Changing the grid size as the user learns to find more words on a small grid will only change the motor plan each time the grid size is changed. So there are several ways of adapting large grid. So without using a smaller grid, you can do 60 to 100 words by using borders and backgrounds and make symbols easier to find by changing the text size or color, by changing the symbol size or color, having no text, only symbols, having no symbols, only text, inverting the screen color, which I'll show you later, changing the symbols to high contrast symbols, switch scanning with auditory scanning either at the beginning to help the user learn the motor plan or as a permanent access method, making page background black, spacing between button and a keyguard, which Stefanie will show you what a keyguard is in a while. Examples of adaptation I have made. So this is the original LAMP homepage with a black background because I can't stand the white background. It's too bright. And that's the only adaptation made on this page. Now my LAMP homepage, oops, I just made it large with my larger thing. My LAMP homepage looks like this, and Stefanie got totally confused by this LAMP homepage because none of her markers are there. But for me, I can actually see the symbols on this page. So what I have done is I have removed the text from all the symbols on the home page, which I don't have done on the other pages because the other pages I actually do need the text. But on the home page, I have memorized the motor plan. I don't need the text. I have Roman word bubbling, which is the words are, is, was, were, was, and then, the plus S and ly are all Roman word bubbling. I moved but did not delete any of the symbols. So I moved stop and help so that they would be separate from each other because they're both red colors. So I wanted them separate. They both have red borders. I used colored borders. Some have meaning and some don't have meaning. But all help me to find the symbols. And I have background of all the symbols are black. And I've done that in most of the secondary pages that you get when you click on a homepage button also have black backgrounds and black background symbols and yellow text so that I can easily read. This is the SimPod homepage, which is not inverted. This is my SimPod. It's SimPod 60 plus complex, I think. And it is not inverted. Now, if I invert SimPod, there's a setting in your iPad settings where you can invert the screen. The symbols are really wonky, especially when you get to food and you get like purple apples and whatever. But it makes it much easier to see. And it's one iPad setting, and you can actually set your iPad per app. So I just have SimPod set so that it automatically inverts for SimPod only. Now, there's a hybrid idea that I've gotten from other AAC users where which I use the Semantic Pro levels 8 by 9 grid set found on Pages at Central. It's made by Emil, although I don't know how to pronounce his name. I'm sorry. His name's on the next page. It's a large grid size homepage with smaller grid for some of the other folders. The advantage of this is that you still have a lot of room for core words, and the motor plan for the homepage will remain fairly large homepage, but the rest of the system has larger buttons. So what I've done is I've got the next page, which is my places my core word page, my home page, which goes down another page with folders. And then in the one folder, which is places, I've got the same size, but then when I go into my own places, I made it bigger so that I have a smaller grid size, but I don't need a large grid size in that folder, because there's just words in there that I need, my own words. So I've done that with some folders, and other folders I have not. It depends on the folder. So now I'm going to show you switch scanning using Perl to Go, because it's the easiest one to switch scan on for me. So
Speed message. Backspace. Speed message.
oops, sorry.
Backspace. Clear. Home. I. You. Initiate. We. Be. They. Been. Being. To be. Close. Speed message. Backspace. Clear. Home. I. Me. Backspace. Speed message. Backspace. Clear.
I can't hear the sound on
Speed
this,
message.
so
Backspace.
it's really hard for me
Clear.
to switch scan because I'm not getting the auditory cues with Teams. So I'm just going to leave it, but that's
Speed
switch
message.
scanning is a good way to
Backspace.
learn a system,
Clear.
and it's a really good way to do anything.
So Naomi, can I
Message.
can I
Backspace.
interrupt?
Clear.
Yep.
And just so what we were seeing, we were hearing the auditory scanning, so I think that's
Yeah.
important. Do you mind talking a little bit? Because I know you couldn't hear it and it was making it challenging for you, but when you're not connected to a presentation, can you describe how that auditory scanning works and helps you?
Yeah, I'm just trying to figure out how to get rid of this. Oh, I know what I'm doing. Wait a minute. Hold on. There. Okay, stop sharing. There. Now I'm back. Auditory scanning works so that you can scan by row or column, or you can scan by word. So it'll say the words, each word and each choice. And then with my iPad, I just have to hit the screen anywhere to make the selection. With a switch, you would hit the switch. But I don't have a switch, so I just use my iPad as my switch. And you just hit the screen to select what you want to say, and then it starts scanning again. And then you go to the next word. It's a very slow way of communicating, but if it's the best way of access, it's a great way to access. And when I learned LAMP, because I have trouble with that size of grid, I learned it with switch scanning because it helped me to hear the words as part of the motor plan. That's basically what I have.
Okay, that was your presentation?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you. I'm going to share my screen. I feel like there's more that you could talk about.
Like what?
I don't know. But feel free to interrupt me.
Okay.
If anything else comes to mind. I have some additional modification ideas to share with you. And because I am a LAMP certified practitioner and a LAMP trainer, I am most familiar with the PRC Saltillo devices and language systems. I am familiar with other, Proloquo to Go and Speak for Yourself and the other apps that are available, but I teach on this one in particular. So you'll notice that my examples reflect that professional knowledge base I have. But I'm sharing some ideas of ways that I've seen others modify their system. This particular, the person using this device is a younger person, young man, teenager, and he's using Lamp Words for Life VI, which I'll show you in a few moments. But his mom, he has the VI touch guide on it. A touch guide is different than a key guard. Tactile anchors.
Just cut out. So a touch guide is different than a key guard.
Sorry, say it again.
Just cut out. So a touch guide is different than a key guard. Start from there.
Okay. Yeah. So this touch guide is designed for the LAMP VI visually impaired language system, and it's designed to reflect tactile orientation skills that people will learn as they navigate assistive technology. So no matter where you put your finger on the touch guide, there is a tactile anchor. It might be above it, or it might be a circle around the location, or it might be something to the side or beneath it. And this mom, so clever, she got craft foam and taped it to the back of the touch guide so that her son was a beginning communicator. And he would get frustrated and overwhelmed by everything. So she had narrowed it down using vocabulary builder to hide some of the words. But she had craft foam behind the touch guide. And then she used different textures, and she broke it into 3 quadrants so that each quadrant of the touch guide would have a different texture, so he could have additional navigational tactile feedback for his device. And then she also hot glued some different like plastic sequined gems that had different shapes to them to help him tactily orient to the device. Some other modifications that have been shared with me, Naomi shared the bubble lettering. There is a website, and it's on the Google Drive document. Roman bubble letters, I think, is what the website's called. You'll see it.
Roman word bubbling.
Roman word bubbling.
I use it all the time.
It's fabulous for modifying curriculum, and also for you can try it out with adaptations to your AAC system button symbols. So there's that large picture at the top right, just the word go gives you an example of that. And you can modify the colors, and there's some things you can change with that. The picture on the bottom left shows modifications that someone made where they alternated the rows of the device, and this was Lamp Words for Life, and they alternated the colors of the rows, and they took away the symbol, so it just has the label for the words, so no symbols on it, and using some primary colors that were determined to be helpful for the person using it. So if you start learning more about CVI, cortical visual impairment, you'll understand that different people's visual sensory systems often will have preferred colors, and you'll often see those be primary colors, and red and yellow are typically the most commonly preferred colors, but really it just depends on the client, the person, what benefits them. And then Naomi shared this picture with me that I think she showed you earlier, bringing that from another modification. This is another tip that I learned from
I forgot
Naomi.
about keyboard.
Yeah. Do you want to talk about this one?
Yeah, the keyboard is kind of a neat keyboard because you can make the letters and the background and everything basically any color you want. And if you click on the right hand side, there's those 3 dots. They go into all your saved text replays things. So I can show you if you want.
Yeah, you want to demonstrate that?
Yeah.
Well, Naomi, I'm just going to
Yeah.
point out on this while she gets her iPad up and running. This
Yeah.
slide shows you so this is multiple steps where
I
you're
don't want
getting.
to cut you out though.
Oh, I think well, let me just finish this part.
Okay.
That what we're going to show you, what Naomi's going to show you is that these are third-party keyboard apps that you download to your iPad. And there's others, but these are by AssistiveWare and they're particularly lovely. And then you're adding these keyboards within the operating system of the iPad. And then within your AAC app, and I wrote out the instructions for the LAMP app, the instructions for how to get your button to navigate to a new keyboard. And so you'd want to just look at the instructions for, I don't want to leave the call, I'm going to stop sharing. That big red button, the leave, is tempting to press. So you might have to do a little digging to figure out how to link a button on your particular iPad app to a new keyboard. Oh, and Naomi,
I've got to take myself off mute.
Yeah, you're muted.
Okay, can you see my app now?
I can see it and I can hear you.
So if I go to Keeble, I've got all my letters and I've set this up so I can see it, but you could set it up with this. If I click on this, I have all my things.
That's the 3 lines, the top right.
Yeah. I have all my saved text, but I just showed you the address, which is good. So yeah, but you can get all your saved text that you put in your iPad and it just saves it in there.
Fabulous. Yeah, that's been a really wonderful thing that you taught me. I love sharing that, and I found that it really, a lot of people find that helpful.
Yeah, it's a wonderful keyboard. I love it.
Yeah, it really is.
Okay. I hate it when Apple defaults me to the Apple keyboard because then I have to use the Apple keyboard and it sucks.
Yeah. Which is not bad, but just that little tweak really helps. Oh, and I apologize. This is kind of a blurry picture.
There's one more thing I was going to say. Keep in mind that blind people learn where things are. When she was sharing that keyboard back there with all the tactile markers, blind people learn where they are through tactile markers. We learn where the furniture is. We learn where the steps are. We learn where the doors are. All those things are tactile markers for us.
Yeah.
So when you put a keyboard with tactile markers on it or a screen with tactile markers on it, it can actually be used by a totally blind person and they could, learn LAMP.
And one of the things I've in speaking with other AAC users, and it validates my suggestion that AAC users be allowed to have access to a key guard or a touch guide before it's ruled out that they don't need it. So you might be with an AAC user who has perfectly fine motor skills, and there might be a perception that they don't need a touch guide or a key guard. But what I've learned from some of my friends who use AAC devices, and what the analogy that I relate to is, if you've ever had oral, surgery or tooth removed and you had your mouth shot up full of Novocaine, and you go out in the car and you're like trying to call somebody and you start to talk, and immediately your feedback system kicks in and tells you, hey, there's something really wrong here. And what I observe is that there's 2 feedback loop systems for me. I'm an oral speaker, and the placement of my teeth. So if I'm going to say a word like touch, my tongue goes to a certain part in my mouth and my lips move a certain way, and there is a tactile, when I have it just right, my brain says that's just right. But if my body had some Novocaine in it and my tongue can no longer feel that it's in the right spot in my mouth, my brain's like, whoa, something's really wrong. And the other feedback loop that happens with communication is the auditory feedback loop. So if I can say the word touch, no problem, but then I have Novocaine in my mouth and it's like, huff, then all of a sudden my brain's like, whoa, something's really wrong here. So we develop feedback loop systems that tell us we're on the right track, and key guards and touch guides can become part of a person's feedback loop system as they're learning how to communicate. And it just gives them another level of, hey, things are going the way I planned them to go.
If you have an AAC user who you don't think needs a touch guard or key guard, ask them if they want one too. Always ask, because they may want to use their iPad for like 16 different things like I do. And
Yeah.
a touch guard will do no good for them. It will be an utter frustration.
Yeah. And so Naomi shared a couple of, for those of you that maybe are not putting the pieces together, Naomi has access to, I don't know how many different AAC systems on your iPad, like 5.
About that?
Yeah. So Naomi is a part-time AAC user, a multimodal communicator, total communicator, and it would be restrictive for her to have a key guard or touch guide on there. I think a lot of the people that I work with they don't develop that complex array of access, systems, and so just depends on the user. This really blurry photo, and I apologize, I'll try to describe it so you can see it better. It's an iPad with a lamp, Words for Life, on it, and it has a key guard that has been taped over with Gorilla Tape, and then holes were cut to show, looks like there's 9 words on here showing. And this was for a little dude that was 2 years old, and he was blind, and he also had other disabilities, other diagnoses going on, some motor issues, attention issues, cognitive issues. So this setup was really designed for a beginning communicator. And you can see at the top of the black grid, there's a green pom-pom, and then we use different textures like Velcro squares, one of them the crunchy Velcro, one the soft, and then the little pom-pom to help him have some tactile anchors. We've used different things like this before. I would like to just show this demo. I knew I was forgetting to do something, so I'll open this up. I'm going to show this demo. It is a specific language system, which I know I really don't want you to just nail down on a single one, but there's some features that I'll show you here that you might find available in other language systems as well. The primary, there's some primary differences between LAMP and other language systems, and LAMP uses a language system that was developed by a gentleman named Bruce Baker, and it's based on the concept of semantic compaction, which sounds confusing, and really when you try to understand it, it actually is complex. But I find that users of all abilities are capable of learning this language system. And what makes it unique is that it has a very definite motor plan involved with it. So I'm just going to go to the full and just show you a couple of things here and why it's important to think about a language system that has a consistent motor plan. So just like Naomi said, we learn if, it doesn't matter if you have perfect vision or impaired vision. If somebody came in the middle, you went to bed and somebody came in and rearranged all the furniture in your room, and you get up in the middle of the night in the dark to go to the bathroom, you might kill yourself, because we develop motor plans. We develop motor plans with everything we do. If I videotaped you brushing your teeth every day for the next month, I'd probably see that you do it almost identical. You pick up the toothbrush with the same hand, you squeeze, you probably even start brushing on the same side of your mouth. We do these motor plans, and why that's important for you to understand is that when you can do something without thinking about it, then you free up a lot of cognitive effort so that you can focus more on getting your message out versus trying to locate where something lives.
Okay, can I say one thing? One of the
Yeah.
best examples of motor planning is a physical keyboard. If you have a keyboard and you put your hands on it, you know exactly where your 5 fingers are going to go if you type with 5 fingers.
Yeah.
And if somebody came in and said, hey, you need more words, so we're going to put, and you need more letters, so we're going to move some letters around and put some more letters around, like when I use the French International keyboard. It's totally confusing because all the letters, some of the letters are moved so the accents can fit in.
Mhm.
It's like I have to learn a totally new motor plan for this keyboard.
And, and Naomi mentioned earlier, finding a grid size that is a good big size. The only thing I want you to be thinking about is whatever you start with, is that going to be what they're going to be able to stay with? Can you modify it over time so that whatever motor plans are acquired at whatever stage of language learning it's acquired in, that we can preserve those moving forward.
That's also why you have access to a keyboard and numbers. Because
yes,
even if you don't have words on your iPad, when you get older, you can type them.
yeah,
It's a valuable thing. Don't ever take numbers. One of the first songs somebody pointed out to me last week that a child learns is the ABC song. So if you decide a child is not ready for letters and numbers, think twice about that.
yeah, I agree. Well, the LAMP visually impaired version, if you're familiar with regular LAMP, when you're on full, you have to move your finger even more. So if you wanted to say the word eat, you would have to move your finger up here in regular LAMP. So the LAMP VI, we talk about core words versus fringe words. So thinking about core words means that we're thinking about words that humans intuitively and automatically use more frequently during their conversations and communications. But fringe words, I like to think about core versus fringe with the little justice scale. So we might have 20 core words on one side of the scale, little pan, and we might have 3 fringe words in the other side, but the weight would be equal. And if you take away the fringe words, then it's unbalanced. So finding a way to allow the development of these high frequency core words, but then also bringing in access.
Just
That,
cut out again. You just cut out again at access.
oh, it just cut out again. Gosh, I don't even remember what I said.
Well, just start again then.
Okay.
Explaining this page.
Say that again.
Start by explaining this page because it's different than the LAMP page I've noted. So why is it different and why did they make it different?
Okay. I'll just start back here. The LAMP VI has been modified so that these 82 high frequency core words have a much simpler motor plan. So instead of having to take your finger and move it to another location to then say one of these 82 core words, you get to keep your finger in the same spot. So it's a simpler motor plan for these high frequency core words. And then to access the fringe words, they all live in their regular places, but these 3 corners are left open. So if you needed to move a high frequency fringe word like cupcake or candy to make it motorically easier to access, then these corners are left open so those buttons can be moved. One of the other things to show is just the idea of making of using a hide and show feature in excuse me, I didn't mean to do that. I'll just leave it there. I was going to stay in BI, but I will go here. This is what the regular LAMP visually looks like. Hiding and showing words. Now this is again creating a restrictive environment. You want to have a really good therapeutic reason for doing so. And I find that beginning communicators will often, you can begin teaching communication at the cause and effect level. And so having a way to hide all but a couple of words, other things that can be done are looking at the background of the screen. So if you have a way to change the contrast of the background, and then looking at changing the colors of buttons. And you can do this temporarily to draw attention to a particular button that you're trying to teach, or so you could, just work on changing the outline to make it a little bit more visible. Or you could show you what that looks like. Just give a little pop of color, or you can change the color of the whole button. And most language systems allow you to do this, to change the colors of the buttons. And obviously those are going to be, different for every system. So you just need to get with the training resources available for whatever system you're using and figure that out. So 3 key features: being able to hide all but a couple of words that you're initially targeting, and then quickly show them again without changing the motor plan, changing the colors of buttons, and then looking at the environment of the screen as a whole, and are there ways to change it to make it a higher contrast?
And
Is there
as an
anything?
AAC user, I would highly recommend you start and work down. Start with most and work down.
Yes. So that's
Start
that
with
again.
full screen, and then if the user is having trouble, then try. Because I find that often when we limit language, we forget to add more language.
Naomi is 100% correct. And I have worked with 18-month-old children who had made success on language systems that had thousands of words that I know 33-year-old people have used. So we don't make changes because we think it's going to be best for the client. We make changes because we've seen that they need it for a therapeutic reason.
I always say just because we can do it doesn't mean we should do it.
Right. We always want to keep in mind, how big is the pot we're putting them in? Are they going to be able to grow and flourish in it? I do have a little video that shows auditory fishing. So Naomi was showing that with her switch scanning. Many language systems, I don't know about one, you might be able to correct me, if you can do auditory fishing on any iPad apps.
I'd have to play with my iPad to figure that out. I think,
yeah.
But I'm not sure.
Yeah. So this is an example on a dedicated device of what auditory fishing looks like.
Auditory fishing is using the settings that allow you to use auditory prompts. And the auditory prompt will, when you activate the button, will speak the label. So in this case, the label is the word eat. And when I tap it once,
eat,
it says eat in a quiet voice. And when I tap it again,
eat,
it says it in a louder voice. You can adjust the volume so that the auditory prompt voice is much quieter than I have it. And you can also sync the device to a pair of Bluetooth headphones or a Bluetooth speaker, or you could plug in just regular headphones to the device and let that message
slow,
come out. So you'll notice
clear.
it won't show up there.
Want to eat
Until I've tapped it 2 times.
Message window. I want to eat.
That's auditory fishing.
Naomi works with iPad apps. Is that primarily iPad apps? Oops.
Yeah, I don't have a dedicated device, so yeah.
Yeah. So some of the things that we're showing, the iPads are getting really slick, and I just saw a new eye tracking system on an iPad that's going to be released this summer that is dynamite. So access on the iPad is continuing to get more and more robust, but some of these features are really only available on dedicated devices. I do have I wish I had stock and Gorilla Tape. Our clients who benefit from having this as a modification, again, this is quite literally the most restrictive way of presenting an AAC device. And so you really want to have a plan for how quickly can we show more words, and really plan to open it up as fast as you can. But the Gorilla Tape works particularly well, better than duct tape. So I do have that particular, because it cuts well and it holds its place well. And one thing I didn't have on here, the example on the iPads, on the devices that are shown here, show the whole screen covered up. I have worked with clients where I would just have a square of Gorilla Tape with a single, like I have a single piece of Gorilla Tape with a single square cut out. And then as we're learning new words, might have all the words showing, but I would just put the tape temporarily around the one square that I'm like, hey, this is a new word. We're working on this today. Let's see if we can find it and learn, let's have a game with it, so that it's a little bit easier to kind of use that tactile feedback of finding the right place with your finger and then removing it quickly. Other ways to draw some visual and tactile attention to locations would be using puffy paint. You can just outline things with that.
I think the puffy paint idea is like totally cool because, it's cheap. You can buy it at the dollar store or whatever store you call in America. And
yeah,
it's a great idea.
Yeah. So so far we've really talked about people or ways of accessing devices with direct selection. And I just want to show a couple of examples of people who use, and Naomi demonstrated switch scanning using the screen of her iPad to scan through and you get auditory prompts there. But motorically, when it's all said and done, if I understand this correctly, Naomi, when you learned the orientation of where things are located by switch scanning, you then change to using your finger to directly select your
If I'm having trouble finding a word, I will go back to auditory switch scanning with auditory scanning. I have it set up so that all I have to do is, if I click my home page, my home button 3 times, I get a list of accessibility features I can turn on and turn off. Mm-hmm. And I also have assistive touch, so I can very quickly set up switch scanning without having to go through a rigmarole of iPad settings.
So Naomi, you're unique because not only are you a part-time AAC user, but you're also part-time alternative access AAC user.
Yeah.
So some individuals are going to be, they're going to use alternative access pretty much probably all the time. So kiddos with really complex bodies might initially need to learn how to use a switch. So what you're seeing here is a little guy who is, we're helping him learn how to use 2 switches. So we're helping him learn how to use his body to access switches to make them do something. And he requires 100% physical supports to move his body and to maintain a position in space. So he's in a very supportive, we call it his work chair. He didn't spend the whole time there, just when he was learning new skills or, working on switch scanning. He's tube fed. This little one experienced seizures on a regular basis. He has diagnosis of CBI, and he also wears glasses to correct for acuity. So you're seeing him. This was the very first time that we had 2 little switches connected to some lock line that were attached to his chair, and then this is a Bluetooth switch interface that's connected to an iPad that we have positioned, about 18 inches from his face. And one switch will make the app, it's called Big Bang Patterns. One switch will make a picture show up, and the other switch will make the picture move and some music play. We've also reduced the complexity behind the iPad. We have in a space with a black background and the little Christmas lights to draw his attention. So just looking for ways to engage, be fun, something that's fun for him and engaging. And then we really only did that for a week or two. And then we introduced a language system called Core Scanner. And Core Scanner is a language system that's available on the Accent, the dedicated device that PRC Saltillo sells. It's a unique language system that is set up to facilitate scanning while also having access to core words. So we're using the same switch setup, same positioning in his chair, and we're just introducing him to Core Scanner for the first time. Oh, the other thing is that we have auditory prompts turned on. So notice in this video, you'll see the device is actually kind of far away from him because he's not using his vision to visually scan. He's auditorily scanning. So he's listening. He has a little speaker behind his head. And when he clicks and it moves to the messages, the little speaker will speak the label of the message. And then when he selects it with the other switch, it will speak the message out loud on the device.
And the thing I said during this part is Core Scanner is kind of a cool program. And I think it should be available for touch users too, because it would be great for visually impaired users. It's just really well thought out program.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to be with the developer of the language system in a couple of months. I might bug them about it.
Stop. Stop. More. Stop. Go. It's going. Stop. Go. Low. Mind. Way. Turn.
Turn it. You want me to turn it?
More.
I'm going to pause it here for just a second so I can explain to you what you're seeing. Core Scanner, this would be basically like level 1 in Core Scanner. It has a different name. I can never remember, but let's call it level 1. And then, so level 1 has 8 core words on it. And these are selected based on statistical analysis of the frequency of words that are used in the human language by, developing communicators. So they're not just randomly picked. Now, these 8 buttons are really not buttons, they're quadrants. They're 8 quadrants. So when we move him from the first level to the second level, these quadrants then become a square with 9 buttons on it. And in the first square, it's the word more. When it has a quadrant of 9 buttons, that first button in the quadrant of 9 will be the word more. So he's going to learn that we click on the right 1, 2, 3 times to get to the go quadrant, and then we click on the left to say the word go. When we move him through the levels, he'll be able to maintain those motor plans that he's learned and just expand on them. He's not going to have to learn new ones.
Stop. More.
You're about to see him take a big deep breath and squeal.
Go. More.
And smile.
Stop.
That's our sign. That's how he demonstrated us. He's kind of something or someone. So this next little bit, you're going to see him. He's listening and he's scanning through and listening to every single word. And when he finds the word he wants, he moves his head over here. And I just have to explain this little switch setup was just temporary, and his switch over on the left side of his head had moved out of the way. So you're going to see my hand move around, but it's really just to stabilize it. It moved just out of his reach.
Stop. Go. Low. play, on, turn, more.
Good. You were listening so good.
Stop.
So, and I will just put a plug in. Those little Lockline tubing, the company that makes that, they've since come up with a more stable option. It's called Mogo mounts. It's also through the same Lockline company. So for just trying out things with kids before you get a permanent mounting solution for switches and whatnot, the Mogo mounts are really, really good. See if I can move off of this. Okay. The last little bit here is just to show, talk about changes over time. Where I worked and collected these videos, had the opportunity to work with little people over extended periods of time. And this one little person I'm going to show you a video of next, got to work with her for 5 years. And over the course of 5 years, she changed and she just became a completely different little person than she did when she first came to the school. I think she was between 18 and 24 months old at that time, and had a very complex body, very complex visual system. She didn't learn how to walk until she was like 4.5. Her visual processing continued to change and evolve over time. And she also had acuity issues. So there's just a lot going on with this little human. And we tried a lot with her, a lot of things, all the things, sign language, tactile stacks from the Texas School for the Blind and Visually Impaired, simple voice output buttons like the Big Mac or the 2-switch communicator or step-by-steps, sounding board, or we could create really custom big buttons that she could access on an iPad, lots of different things. And over time, everything just, she just changed. And so I like to show this because if we stayed with the idea that she was who she was when we first met her, and she remains to this day a very complex human in a complex body, but she has learned how to do what we would consider to be complex things. So trying all of those things showed you in the previous slide, and honestly, none of them really worked well. Just none of them really worked well. And there was a day that I had gotten a brand new device with head tracking, and I was going to try it with another kiddo at the school. And we had just a few months left with this little one before she graduated and went to public school. So I had my shiny new toy, and I took it in there to try one more time, another device.
Ella, I'll help you. You say go.
Go.
Good
go,
job,
go,
love.
go.
Yeah, let's go. Yay for Ella. Ella.
It was game on. We only had a couple of months left to work with little Ella. And in Oklahoma, we have to submit a video of the person using the device in order to get Medicaid to fund a device. So in this video, we are doing that. We're trying to collect a good video for little Ella. And just keep in mind, her visual status is still really complex. She has developed some visual skills, but you'll see she gets really close to the buttons. And sometimes you'll also see how she disengages her visual system from her motor system. Sometimes she's really not relying on her vision much at all. She's really relying on her tactile feedback system and tactily orienting to find the words that she wants to say.
Yes.
Yes. She wants her share. Yes.
Yes.
He
Wand.
He wants.
Wand.
He wants it.
Wand. Light.
So she was just a really great little learner, and it taught me a lot about patience and moving.
You're
moving. Sorry.
Hannah.
And moving at a pace that meets their needs. If we have time for one more Yeah, you're studies. Sweet. I will show you this one. This little guy had a lot of visual challenges and tactile challenges. I'll just fast forward. It was really difficult to find what was going to work for him. Just for time's sake, I'm just going to kind of move a little quickly. The thing about this little guy is that he had CVI that we later got a diagnosis for. And then he also really needed to be wearing glasses. And so his ability to interact with an AAC device and really to interact with meaningful activities in his environment, this little toy that I put on the table in front of him, it was a little top that moved, and the toy itself is red and yellow. It was a toy that fit his visual needs. So a lot of things happening in the environment around him, he just literally cannot visually process. And also, if you notice, the device itself did not have a key guard on it. I didn't have a high contrast field. I was using a feature where you could hide all but a couple of words to give him, because he was learning at a cause and effect level, to give him a little more success locating buttons. But he really had a lot of challenges accessing the device. And one thing about Montana that's important, this is a good time to show you this exercise, he has a lower field loss. So at the beginning of this training, I suggested that if you have someone that you either have a diagnosis of a particular vision impairment or you suspect a visual impairment of a certain kind, try to figure out what that feels like and looks like. So he had a lower field loss. So if you want to take your hands with me right now, and I put my hands together, my little fingers together, and then just put them on the edge of your nose to kind of create a bridge so that you can't see what's underneath your fingers. And just look at whatever's in front of you. When I do that, I've got my laptop computer and I literally can't see the keyboard. So if you're a little person that you've had your whole life walking around and half of the world is missing, think about what a toy placement, what happens when you have a toy placed in that field of vision that's not picking up on things, or you have a device placed. So some things that we did differently is that we got the device on a stand. We made some changes to the way the device looked, and over just a really short period of time,
More. What? I heard that.
He began to learn
I heard you say that.
how to access words and use them.
Here it is.
Now he would have been.
Oh my gosh, you could be a killer. Oh, it's gonna go bye-bye. More. Here you go.
It took a while for him to get to that point. And he honestly would have been a really great communicator with like a Big Mac or a step-by-step. But it's a very small pot to put someone in. So while
You cut out again after pot.
while we put him in we really want to give him an environment where he can grow.
Yeah.
So this shows a picture of what the device looked like later on for him with the adaptations that were made. And the other thing to keep in mind, some people do require some physical supports to learn new motor skills. I've raised two little humans, and as they learned some of the basic things like feeding themselves and brushing their teeth and tying their shoes, initially, as the competent human teaching them, I gave them physical supports. I helped them hand over hand learn how to make the laces of their shoes go a certain way so they could tie them. And then you fade those prompts. I want you to learn about hand underhand, also known as the hop-on strategy. And you could probably find a YouTube video, but it's a very respectful and it provides a level of autonomy when you're needing to give those, and it's not, we don't want to be doing it all the time because that's too restrictive. But initially, as you're teaching motor plans, if you can use a hop on where you help your partner learn that hey, we're going to hop on, and you just place your hand underneath theirs, so they know where their hand is going in space. And then if you need to, you can take your hand and kind of shape the fingers to get an index finger point. And at any time as their hand is moving in space, it's not restricted. They can easily lift it off and put it where they need to go.
And the thing is, with hand over hand or hand under hand, you have to ask or respect their autonomy. If they move their hand away, your hand goes away.
Yes,
and they know, you leave.
Yes, and it's a super respectful way, and you might come up with a different cue. I was taught this way, and I kind of like, hey, we're gonna hop on, and that becomes something that you learn to do together. We're gonna hop on. You're gonna hop on my hand. I'm gonna help you touch this device so you can let me know if you're ready to eat or drink. And this photograph shows you might not have a table stand for your device. You might be using iPads without a way to mount it. And this was we used a piece of lock line with a clamp on it to the table and a cardboard box, because this little boy also had a lower field loss and needed the device kind of close to his face for acuity reasons. So you can improvise with that. So this last slide, this last few videos, just another little guy who came and had a lot of great communication skills. His family had taught him about 50 sign language words. And some of them were recognizable, like more, but he had a lot of custom signs that he and his family had developed, intimate custom sign language that his people unfamiliar with him took a while to learn. And he was, so he had a lot of great receptive language skills, and he had a really robust expressive language vocabulary of sign language that as you move out into the wider world, having a robust AAC system for him made a lot of sense. So this little video, just very first introduction to communication.
You don't want to. What that means is it's time to start finishing our food.
And his behaviors did not match
Eat a little more.
with what we kind of knew he could do.
Yeah, there we go. I'm going to eat a little more before we have to get up from the table.
His behaviors with the device really did not match up with, what you would call his receptive language skills or even his expressive language skills. Really challenging. Everything to do with his vision. So he spent a lot of time in active learning opportunities, and this is a word and a methodology that's presented by Lily Nielsen, and it's where you give a little human lots of opportunities to learn how to explore their environment and have static placement of toys and things that they can go back to and time again and begin to learn how their world works using the visual system that they have and other systems as well. So this little guy spent a lot of time just learning how to move and see in his environment while also simultaneously having access to robust language systems. Didn't work out. The language systems weren't perfect initially. So it looks random, but he's really learning a lot in this segment. And he did this a lot. There's one of his little signs. So spent a lot of time doing that. But we also continued to give him access to robust language systems. And so this was all in the course of a single year that he made such great progress. So this is towards the end of the year. The very first video of him accessing, it was Lamp Words for Life with a key guard on it. And this was the towards the end of the year.
Jane, you stop. No, you stop. No, you stop. No, you stop. I'll stop when you stop. Okay, let's stop. Okay, you stop.
So we don't want to wait for vision to develop before we give access to robust language. I will stop sharing my screen now.
Well, I was just
sharing
going to
that.
say one thing. When I did that thing that you have to do where we put our hands up and under our nose, and I'm still looking at my iPad, I can only see the top half of my iPad.
When your hands are there or when they're
Yeah.
gone?
And they're there.
Yeah, so
it takes a lot of vision away, not having that lower vision.
yeah, and
Like for me, who has no side vision, I have next to no sight of my iPad. I can see like a little bit at the top.
and so when you visually access your iPad, are you turning your head to
Well, no,
bring
my iPad's at a size where I don't have to turn my head, but I once got my boyfriend got me a big 22-inch screen, and I had it, and I was turning my head so much I had to tell him, sorry, no, this just doesn't work for me.
So you needed a smaller screen.
I did. So
Yeah.
I didn't have to move my head because my neck was hurting.
Yeah. And that's the thing that's hard for people who don't have a vision impairment to really understand. It is an experiential thing, and you'll be a much better teacher and advocate if you can take the time to try to understand the visual experience of your child or your friend or your client. Well, I've enjoyed doing this with you, Naomi, and I hope that this information is helpful.
Thanks.
And just keep in mind that we do have that Google Drive resource available, that you will have the QR code, and the link will also be in the handouts that we'll share. And our contact information is on that Google Drive document, and you can reach out to us if you have questions.
Yep.
Wonderful. Thank you both so much. We appreciate the things that you shared and some really insightful ways to explore and to look at communication, especially through that lens of visual impairment and some of the things that we face there, but considerations that we can make so that we can help people be successful and be able to express themselves in the best way possible. So Stefanie Olson, Naomi Herman, thank you so much for being part of this presentation. For those attending, thank you for being here at this session of AAC in the Cloud, and we hope we'll catch you in another session very soon. Thank you.